Hey, this is Shauna, and welcome to my seminar, Manga and Libraries. So just as a quick overview of what I'm going to go over today. Firstly, what is manga? How did manga as we know it come about? Manga hits North America. Manga style and content. Light novels, Doujinshi and Scanlations. Who reads manga? And finally, manga in libraries. So what is manga? Manga are comics from Japan with distinctly Japanese cultural context, artistic influence, and content. The term manga was coined by Hokusai, who you may know from one of his most famous images, The Great Wave off Kanagawa. The translation of manga is usually translated to be something like whimsical pictures or sketches. Manga in the 40s and 50s was a bit different than what we consider it to be today. So back then, manga just meant cute or funny stories illustrated generally for small children, and it didn't include more serious content. Just an additional note too, I'm using the word manga. You might be familiar with manga as well, and the only difference there is in Japan they don't have that hard A sound, so I've gotten into the habit of saying manga. But manga is just another way of saying manga, and either is fine. So in Japan in the 50s, the manga industry was mainly separated into shonen, targeting boys, so things like adventure and samurai stories, sports stories, and then shoujo, targeting girls, so things like puppy love. One creator, though, was able to appeal to both sexes and set the stage for the majority of manga over the next 2 decades. And that person was Tezuka. So at the end of World War II, Japanese cartoonists, led by Osamu Tezuka, developed their wartime exposure to Western comics into a form that reflected Japanese techniques and experiences. Within the next 30 years, Japanese manga evolved into what is now internationally recognized as a specific approach to the larger medium of comics. Tezuka is considered by many to be the father, grandfather, or the god of Japanese manga. In his younger years, he was influenced by Disney cartoons and movies from the US. In the 60s, Tezuka combined his interest in comics and cartoons to produce an animated series called Astro Boy, Tetsuan Atomu, which means Mighty Atom. Astro Boy had a nearly 200-episode run and has been seen around the world. Manga continued to evolve. So those readers who had been introduced to manga as children continued to consume different kinds of manga as they grew up. Thus, the kind of stigma attached to comics in many Western nations was circumvented. Science fiction continued to be very popular, but was joined by an incredible diversity of other adult genres, from splatter horror to mahjong, surreal comedy to wok cookery, and martial arts to arts appreciation. These booming manga sales in Japan spelled opportunity for foreign markets, but some factors had to be considered beyond just translating the text, such as the fact that Japanese manga is read from right to left, so often the pages of artwork would be reversed or flopped. Japanese sound effects were also replaced often with English onomatopoeia, and other Japanese conventions of storytelling were also challenging for publishers. These are some examples of common visual symbols in manga that don't necessarily translate over to North American understandings. So things like the sweat drops meaning someone is nervous, the prominent canine tooth meaning that a person is behaving animalistically or losing control, ghost drifting away from the body meaning that they're fainting, the snot bubble coming out of the nose meaning that they're asleep, and the nosebleed meaning that they're aroused. So by the late 1980s, American comic book stores were flooded with manga titles. The drastic change was due to the surge in the popularity of Japanese animated television shows and movies called anime that were often spin-offs of Japanese comics. So what is manga about? Manga can be about anything. Just as comics are a format, manga is a format, not a genre. Manga aren't a single genre like superhero comics or fantasy novels. They don't have a single style with big eyes or speed lines or samurai swords. The term manga covers all Japanese comics, including stories for men and women, children and adults. Historical drama, comedy, romance, horror, science fiction, sports, experimental works. Manga span every genre imaginable. You may think you know the manga style, but there are manga that look nothing like it. That said, there are some conventional attributes that people will consider to be manga style. So, generally speaking, that would be things like large round eyes, meaning innocent, purity, and youth. Medium or oval eyes, meaning that the person is still a good guy, but perhaps with a shady past. More squinty, narrow eyes, being evil, sadistic. Large irises, meaning that that person is the hero or heroine of the story. And small irises, or no irises, meaning that they are the bad guys. So eyes do have a lot to do with character often in manga. Gender play is another aspect that comes up sometimes in manga. Androgyny, gender bending, and gender play are familiar features and tropes that can sometimes be confusing to Western readers. So while gender as performance has an interesting history in Japanese culture, in manga it's frequently used symbolically or as a joke. Again, manga can be about anything, and there are titles suitable for people of all ages. Yet, during the Western boom of manga, there was a sensationalized panic about violence, sexual, and otherwise extreme manga, despite the fact that such titles made up only a really small fraction of those that were available. And some of that stigma still remains today. This was an email that I received from a staff member at my library. So, hello, I had a patron make a comment about a new manga series we received called Trinity 7. The patron told me that most Japanese manga are quite explicit, and that these items should not be out for children to see. The items in question do have warning labels on them. However, the covers are very suggestive, and they were displayed on one of the panels facing the stairs. I'll mention too that this is upstairs in our adult and young adult area, not in the children's area. But it's just not true that most Japanese manga are quite explicit. It couldn't be further from the fact. That said, those types of titles do exist. So, for the Japanese writers and readers of manga, fantasy is fantasy, reality is reality, and never the twain shall meet. Manga can and does portray feelings and behaviors that are forbidden or controversial, while ignoring society's perception of those taboos. Western audiences fear that violent video games or television programming may lead to violence in real life. This kind of fear would never occur to the Japanese, and even if it did, they would dismiss it as too great a leap between cause and effect. Manga in Japan. So in 2017, I had the trip of a lifetime. I went to Japan and traveled around for 3 weeks. Went to Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, Kinosaki, Gunma, and took tons of pictures, and I found that especially in the big cities like in Tokyo and Osaka, anime and manga culture are just all over and intended for all ages. So you would find manga influences in things like informational pamphlets, diagrams, mascots for department stores, cafe collaborations, manhole covers, billboards, just everywhere. So it's very much a part of pop culture in Japan. Fun fact, in Hiroshima there's a public library devoted entirely to manga, and the Kyoto International Manga Museum functions as a sort of library-museum hybrid. Light novels. So light novels are related to manga in some ways. They're books of prose written in short paragraphs, especially popular with teenagers and young adults in Japan. Some light novels may later inspire a manga series or may alternately be a continuation or side story from an existing series. So things like tie-ins, novelizations. Some light novels of popular series are also being translated and published for English readers right now. One thing I've noticed with light novels too is that the bookstores in North America, or in Canada at least, so in Chapters and Kohl's and things like that, they kind of sometimes don't seem to know where to shelve them. So you might find them within the comics in the manga sections, or you might find them in the sci-fi, fantasy kinds of areas as well, just where the fiction novels are. Doujinshi, on the other hand, are fan-made comics that sometimes, but not always, most of the time though, do borrow from existing series. So the copyright violations are flagrant, shameless, and widespread. The publishers avert their eyes, and the doujinshi creators resist going too far. Amateur manga remixers aren't merely replicating someone else's work though. They're creating something original, and in doing so they may well be helping, not hindering, the commercial interests of copyright holders. So there's a delicate balance there that either side resists stepping too far on the other's toes, and right now doujinshi is a flourishing aspect of manga in Japan. Scanlations. So scanlation is a comic which has been scanned, fan-translated from one language to another, and then, often nowadays at least, uploaded online. So generally without copyright permission as well. Many who create scanlations don't see it in the same light as outright pirating, because scanlations provide translations of works that publishers have not yet provided to English audiences to purchase legitimately. So without that choice, they turn to scanlations. Who reads manga? So in Japan, manga isn't necessarily targeting a specific demographic as a whole. There are manga published for all different ages and different interests. So you might see a young child reading manga, you might see an adult heading to their job on the train reading manga, parents, grandparents. There's manga for all ages, men, women, and children. 40% of all books published in Japan are manga, so that's more than 2 billion copies each year. By 2008, more than half of all graphic novels published in the United States, about 1,500 titles, were manga. And in North America, it seems that manga is especially popular with tweens and teens. Viz manga sales are destroying DC, Marvel, and comic market. This is from 2017. So as we can see, the popularity of manga continues to grow. The phenomenon of original English language manga. So this is often referred to as well as original global manga or Amerimanga, and it refers to comics that are inspired by manga style but created by non-Japanese artists. These works are often polarizing and may be snubbed by readers as being non-authentic, fake manga. Manga in libraries can be a huge boon for attracting the ever-elusive teenage demographic. Many teens read manga and are thrilled to see that a library is adapting to their tastes, and also happy to save money when reading manga series that span dozens of books. Furthermore, many of the teens who read graphic novels and Japanese manga otherwise would rarely come into the library. As with any other population, these fans are happy to find other teens, let alone an adult, who speak their language and validate their interests. Some manga publishers provide suggested ratings on their titles. Tokyo Pop, for example, rates theirs from A to M. Adult manga will often be shrink-wrapped and have a warning label on the cover to identify explicit content. When considering a title's age range, it's always useful to check the publisher's ratings, always keeping in mind your own readers' preferences and community standards. Broadly speaking, manga are serials, not monographs. In terms of cataloging, one of the most common mistakes in cataloging manga is that they're cataloged as monographs. In fact, they're serial products, not individual books. Manga series should be cataloged on one serial bibliographic record, distinguished by volume numbers, rather than individually on separate monograph records. Most manga are of a consistent size and follow distinct cover and spine art throughout the series, so they're easily distinguishable. Many libraries do not separate manga from other graphic novels, as manga readers may also enjoy Western comics and vice versa. On the other hand, intermingling manga with Western titles, which generally have much more variability in size and thickness, may lead to messy shelves and tilted volumes. In the end, manga readers will find the manga wherever you shelve it, but making it visible and advertising it well can draw in a larger readership. Consider how teens, and people in general, love of manga and anime could inspire your library's programming. Some ideas include manga book clubs and swaps, discussion groups and hangouts, cosplay events, anime movie night, anime and manga inspired arts and crafts, create your own manga event, exploring Japanese culture and cuisine, manga and anime trivia events, manga and anime video game events, and anything else you can think of. Manga can certainly be used in the classroom, as it can be used to explore Japanese culture and society, comic structure and format, literary analysis, and narrative construction. Providing manga options can help facilitate differentiated learning in a class, and can even make cross-curricular connections, depending on what manga are chosen for classroom use. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and these are the references that I used throughout. Thank you!